In 150 yards, turn right onto Dover Road. Turn right onto Dover Road. Continue for 1.5 miles.
By sports people because they've got potassium in and they're supposed to be very good for you. Strawberries, £614 million worth were sold the other year. £614 million. Grapes went to number 2. Bananas have dropped to 4th position because underneath grapes are apples. See, I like an apple occasionally. I know most people think they're very boring, but I like them. Pink Lady's very nice. I like a crunchy apple. And blueberries, very popular. Clementines, very popular. Raspberries, oranges, lemons, and pears. Not as many pears were sold. £102.5 million worth of pears. I like pears, conference or otherwise. But no, but my mother used to do them as a dessert. She would do poached pears. They used to be poached in red wine. And I remember thinking, I used to think it was quite an exotic dish to have, actually. A 999 caller used the emergency phone line to wait for the... You know, you've had stupid people in the past. We found the ultimate stupid person today. So a 999 caller used the emergency phone line to report her boyfriend for refusing to kiss her. I mean, we've had some thick people in the past where they've gone, hello, is that 999? I've got an emergency, my Chinese takeaway's not arrived. You know, but refusing to kiss her. Her complaint, branded unreasonable, featured in a list of time-wasting calls to police. Other nuisance callers wanted to find out train times, report having no water, and to get a phone number for a dentist. They were highlighted by the Lincolnshire force as it heads into one of the busiest times of the year. Control room head Mike Modder-Fitch said, if one of your drunk mates thinks it's okay to call 999, I'd ask you stop them from wasting hours and their time. I don't know whether there's a law against it. They did find some bloke. He'd been phoning up, complaining bitterly about everything, but they luckily found him because he was connected inadvertently to a CCTV system, and they got him. And they put him in court because he was a bit dim. I do feel sorry for the George Michael story. It took 5 years for him to get a gravestone, and his sister died and all sorts of other things. There was a plan for a Bohemian Rhapsody cash cow movie, which has gone on hold. The family are in turmoil, they say, over his £97 million fortune. He'd be horrified that things were sort of going so slowly. 300,000 earned every year by his estate from sales and plays of Last Christmas. He sold 120 million singles and albums, and he's got 5 Brit Awards from 24 nominations. I hope they sort it out. I don't like to see people fighting, you know, over things like that. But that's the way it goes. Listen, thank you very much indeed for your company. Get the shopping done. Mind you, most of you appear to be sort of staying in at the moment, which is probably the best thing you can do. You don't want to get COVID. Make sure you download my free Little Bit Extra podcast. There's a new episode every single morning on the Global Player, as well as listening live to LBC. You can listen back to this and other LBC programmes, as well as a range of podcasts. I'll be back tomorrow morning from 4 with Steve Allen's Early Breakfast here on LBC. So just go to lbc.co.uk, download the app, then you can download absolutely everything in the podcast department. Have a great day, have a safe day. Coming up at 10 on LBC, it's James O'Brien. But right now, with your Tuesday breakfast, it's Nick Ferrari.
Thanks, Steve. At 7 o'clock on Tuesday, December the 21st, as senior members of the government say, it's time to trust the people, not the scientists. Are they right? Prime Minister?
We agreed that we should keep the data under constant review, keep following it hour by hour. We will have to reserve the possibility of taking further action.
And what of Health Secretary Sajid Javid's claim that the anti-vaccinated are damaging society? In a related story,
A dangerous loophole is letting people coming to the UK from abroad give a fake code as proof they've booked a COVID PCR test. I'm LBC's Charlotte Lynch with the story.
Just 10% of patients account for 40% of appointments with our GPs, and in the US...
This is CNN Breaking News.
Also some breaking news this side. Closing arguments are now underway in the sex trafficking trial of Jeffrey Epstein.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tuns Lane, A355.
Those stories are more after 7 o'clock news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Keep right.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, Boris Johnson says the government needs to be clearer about Omicron before imposing any additional COVID measures in England. The Prime Minister's promised to keep the data under constant review, but insists he reserves the possibility of taking further action. Adele Longley is from the Royal College of Nursing in the South East and has told LBC there are huge pressures on her colleagues.
Staffing levels are poor in
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
Nurses really need to look after their own mental health, their own health and well-being. We are deeply worried about the coming weeks as the Omicron variant continues to spread. So many are already at breaking point as they battle to keep the services going.
For now, Boris Johnson wants people to exercise caution. Tom Hall, a director of public health in the North East, says that includes more mask wearing indoors.
It's getting back to making those kind of simple measures normal again. They became very normal in our lives, and then we moved away from them a bit in the summer. It's actually making them normal again within our society, so that actually the majority of people are wearing masks in supermarkets and shops.
All sporting events in Wales will be held without spectators from Boxing Day. The Welsh Government says it needs to act now in response to the threat of Omicron. London's New Year's Eve celebration in Trafalgar Square has been called off, and the Queen has decided to stay at Windsor for Christmas rather than travel to Sandringham. A man has been charged with the murder of a teenager in Pembrokeshire. 18-year-old...
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
On Friday, Lewis Haynes, who's 31 and from Lamphey, is due in court later. The stars of Sex and the City say they're deeply saddened by sexual assault allegations made against their co-star Chris Noth. They say they support the women who've come forward. Noth, who played Mr. Big in the show, has denied the accusations. Work to electrify the Midland Main Line between Kettering and Market Harborough will begin on Thursday. It's part of a wider upgrade of the lines of Sheffield and Nottingham. The government says it's not wasting time with starting work to transform rail services in the Midlands and the North. In the city, the FTSE 100 will reopen at 71.90.
Continue on M4 for 9 miles.
71 points yesterday, and the pound buys $1.32 and €1.17. LBC weather, cloudy and cold, but mostly dry. A few sunnier spells developing in places. Windy in the far southwest, a high of 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conley.
Snow's falling on an old red brick apartment block. Inside, Christmas is in full swing. Behind number 12, pork is crackling as coke is fizzing. In 45, the table is being extended for the extended family. And Christmas puddings are being ignited in 18, 10, 34. Behind every door, there's a name. Behind every name, there's a story. Coca-Cola. Real magic. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
3 minutes after 7 on Tuesday, December the 21st. It's time to trust the people, not the scientists. Senior members of the government say, seemingly supported by the Prime Minister, are they right on that? And what of the Health Secretary, suggesting that those of you who are unvaccinated are actually damaging society? We'll look at those stories. It's not all COVID related, but there are other stories, not least the impact that it's had on top sports such as Premier League football. Here's Leicester midfielder, yes, Leicester City midfielder Yuri Tielemans. He happened to win the FA Cup earlier this year for Leicester City, talking about it and the impact that it's had on his side.
We've had a 48-hour shutdown in the training ground. We were prepared for a game, and then it's been called off, unfortunately, due to another positive test.
Yes, Leicester City have had their last 2 matches postponed. That's one of the best runs they've had all season, so maybe continue. In other news,
Both Britain and France are being sued over the deaths of 27 migrants in the English Channel last month. I'm Peter Allen, reporting for LBC from Paris.
Watching and waiting, it won't be in our watch, though, of course, for a verdict on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, but the jury has retired. We await a verdict. Back in the UK, 10% of patients account for 40% of GPs' appointments. I've got a radical solution to that. Stay tuned. It's unlikely to please most of you, but I'll give it to you in the next hour. And it's being hailed at last a victory for free speech. The gender tweet former police officer wins a landmark case as the appeal court rules a hate incident guidance would threaten human rights.
Being offensive is one of the fundamental aspects. It's one of the cornerstones of freedom, because a freedom that doesn't allow offence is not a freedom that's worth having.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
While I agree wholly with the former police officer and what he said there, does it mean that I can knowingly cause offence then? Is that how we take it? It really is dancing, on the head of a pin, that one. And we'll look at that in more detail. But let's come. That perhaps doesn't affect as many people as plans for Christmas and possibly even the New Year. Ministers now discussing banning large live events. I mentioned football, but there are other events as well. And of course, the West End again devastated. This is if the Omicron variant continues to surge. Boris Johnson holding a 2-hour cabinet meeting yesterday where I understand they divided pretty much into two camps, and it looks as though if he wanted to bring in further restrictions, he was held back. And there is a sense now that it's time to trust us, the people, but not the scientists. LBC's political editor Theo Ashwood reports. Theo.
Christmas is saved. Yesterday's cabinet meeting went on for more than 2 hours. On the line, further restrictions, including a ban on meeting indoors, to be put in place in time for Christmas. But in the face of significant opposition from his senior ministers, the Prime Minister insisted the government would not be taking action for now.
We agreed that we should keep the data from now on under constant review, keep following it hour by hour. And unfortunately, I must say to people, we will have to reserve the possibility of taking further action to protect the public and to protect public health, to protect our NHS. And we won't hesitate to take that action.
Christmas might be saved, but there is still the possibility Parliament will be recalled before the new year to approve further lockdown measures. That could include a circuit breaker imposed on December the 28th. Another idea suggested at Cabinet yesterday, stopping football fans from attending games. Meanwhile, the Commons leader Jacob Rees-Mogg insisted it was time to trust people to do the right thing. But Labour leader Keir Starmer suggested the PM was delaying lockdown measures because of opposition within his own party.
Throughout the pandemic, my strong feeling is the government has been too slow. But here we are with a variant that everybody's very, very concerned about. And what I want to see is a government, a Prime Minister, that gets a grip and puts a plan forward that hopefully we can all get behind. But where is he? There's a vacuum of leadership at the moment. The infighting is going on in the Tory party, when the focus should really be on the public interest and public health.
Christmas might be saved, but prominent public figures are still adjusting their plans. The Queen will no longer be holding her traditional family get-together at Sandringham, but a much smaller Christmas at Windsor. But business leaders have accused the government of hitting industry with messages of caution without providing extra support. Angela Hartner is one of the country's most prominent restaurateurs.
We either open up fully or we close. You know, this in-between and this mixed messaging and no coherent strategy is what's absolutely killing the hospitality businesses, along with theatres and cinemas, etc., because no one is clear. So, you know, we have lots of cancellations because people are nervous and they're not getting direct, clear communication from the government, and we're left in this limbo where there's no support from the government.
Top chef Angela Hartner concluding Theo Ashram's report. Theo, before I let you go, you mentioned a circuit breaker, and it does appear that is certainly on the table, if not we're inching towards it. Well, for the listeners, what does that mean?
It's a short lockdown that if the government continues to see a surge in the number of Omicron cases, that in effect it brings in a lockdown for a finite period of time.
So what can or can't people do?
So the possibilities are we're looking at a ban on football matches, other large gatherings, a possibility of, and this has been talked about in Westminster, of going back to step 2. Do you remember step 2 was on April the 12th?
Limited
pubs, you have to meet outdoors, you can't meet inside a pub. That's the territory the government is looking at. Not a full lockdown that we saw at the start of the pandemic and then through January, February and March of this year, but something akin to that transition phase before we reach Freedom Day on July the 19th.
Theo Ushwood reporting. Let's turn to John Byrne-Murdoch, who's chief data reporter at the Financial Times, has helped us on a number of occasions through this ghastly pandemic. If I were to ask you, John, is the data taking us towards something such as a circuit breaker or a mini lockdown? What would you say? Good morning.
Morning. It's still very tricky to establish exactly where we are. So what we have seen in the last week is a sustained increase in the number of COVID positive patients in hospitals in London, and that is not something we want to see. But equally, it's not a sort of definitive slam dunk, as it were, of things becoming cataclysmic. And so I can understand why people on both sides of this would look at the current situation and see it as unsatisfactory. I can see why some people feel that left to our own devices there is a risk that things continue to get worse. I can see why others look at things and say, well, we're not at that point yet, and therefore there's no need to slam the door just now, as it were.
Does the data from South Africa help or hinder?
Excellent question. The data from South Africa, if you're a South African, looks promising. We've seen the increase in cases now reverse in the region that have been at the heart of that outbreak. We're seeing slowdowns in the increase of other metrics as well, but because of the very different situation in South Africa to here in terms of the population, vaccines, that kind of thing, it's very difficult to know how much of that reduced severity that we see in South Africa would map onto the UK.
The number of cases is crucial, the number of hospitalisations obviously is crucial. What about, sadly, the number of people who succumb to this new variant? Do we have any data on just how lethal it can be?
We're still very, very early in that phase. So again, the data from South Africa does show a lower fatality rate.
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
We just started to see the impact on hospitals, so it's too early so far to see the impact on deaths.
And what are the time lags you're working with, John? How long does it take for all the reporting to get to a central database that you can then access?
So the cases come through very quickly. We get those on the dashboard with everyone else every day. Hospitalisations, there's usually around a 1 week delay between someone testing positive and ending up in hospital. So the fact that we've now seen just about a week of these very, very steep rises in cases means we're starting to see that come through in hospitalisations, and then deaths would be another week or so after that. So it could be at least another week before we know that.
And some of the newspapers are running pieces from what seem to be some learned individuals suggesting that the scenarios put forward have been too gloomy, that they always take the most pessimistic side of any modelling. How fair, in your view, is that assertion?
It's a tricky one. I think that the modellers have been asked to look at what happens if this was as bad as it could be, and you can understand that. If you imagine someone wanting to put in safety measures for an air crash, for example, what they look at is what happens if the plane crashes. They don't look at what happens if everything's fine. So I think that approach that the models are taking is perfectly fine. But what it does mean is that when we hear these numbers come out, we need to be aware that they are, in many cases, but not all cases, worst case scenarios rather than predictions for what's most likely to happen.
Thanks for your time, John. Fascinating talking to you. John Byrne-Murdoch is Chief Data Reporter of the Financial Times. Listening to that is Jamie Njoku Goodwin, who is the Chief Executive of UK Music, acting for music performers and writers. He also served as an advisor to Matt Hancock when he was Health Secretary as recently as last year. Joins me now. Well, we know the impact that there's been on some theatres, or many theatres actually, in live events. Is it now time, in your view, to trust the public rather than scientists? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Look, it's been an incredibly difficult 20 months for the music industry, for the events industry, for the wider hospitality sector. And this month, to be honest, was when we were hoping to recover. It was when we were hoping to start making some money and income back. And the current situation is causing absolute.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Presenting this as completely clear cut, either for lockdown or for no restrictions at all. But there is obviously some incredibly complex arguments going both ways. The problem we've got as a sector is that we're being caught in the middle of this at the moment. We're seeing high rates.
Exit at junction 3.
Musicians, meaning many events have to be cancelled, and even when those events can go ahead, the messaging from government is essentially meaning.
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Audience no-shows, half half of venues have cancelled gigs for January and February already. So when we have this argument about lockdowns or not lockdowns, actually we may not be seeing a lockdown in policy terms, but we're seeing one in practice in terms of what lots of consumers and what lots of the public are actually doing. And my sector, our sector, is bearing the brunt of that. So again, we think it's incredibly vital that while these debates about public health and restrictions are going on, the sectors that are being impacted by this debate, this isn't existing in a vacuum, Nick. A lot of sectors are really feeling the heat and really feeling the impact of these debates that are going on, and it's vital that we get the support we need to get through this.
You're uniquely placed. You having served in a senior role to Matt Hancock when he was both Culture and then Health Secretary. What's going on behind the doors, apart from cheese and wine, behind the doors at Number 10? How will the ministers, cabinet ministers, be working through this in your view, Jamie? Where will they be? To whom and where will they be looking?
So government is in an absolutely unenviable position, Nick, and I don't envy them at all. When you don't have conclusive data on a new variant, and especially when you've got things like the lag that John was talking about there, you've got a really difficult choice. Do you either move early and risk overreacting and causing huge damage to the economy, or do you wait for more data but then risk not leaving yourself enough time to take action if things are as bad as you fear? So if you get either one of those two wrong, you're either going to cause huge economic damage or huge potential health damage. But the broader issue, and it's one lots of MPs are probably worried about at the moment, is that this is potentially going to set a precedent. So new variants have been popping up all the time over the past 18 months. This is a particularly concerning one. But if we take a call now that...
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway.
...restrictions or tell people to start reducing their social contact, we're going to be doing this for a long time.
I will leave it there. Jamie, thank you. I know you're more, but I've got to move on. Good speaking with you. Thank you. Jamie Njoku Goodwin is Chief Executive of UK Music and also served in that...
Continue on the parkway for 1 mile.
Time to trust the people, not the scientists. Is that the way forward as you see it? We'll take your views on that. Also, the world watches and waits for that verdict.
The fate of Ghislaine Maxwell soon is going to be in the hands of the jury. There were closing arguments today. Prosecutors say that Maxwell helped Jeffrey Epstein abuse girls for years.
Well, I'm noting the severity. I won't be too jocular, but I want an orchestra in the studio now when news breaks. That is sensational. Your views on the problems now that the government is set. Time to trust you and not the scientists after this. 7:16 LBC News headlines without any music, I'm afraid. Simon Conway.
Boris Johnson wants people to exercise caution, but has stopped short of imposing any additional COVID measures in England for now. All indoor and outdoor sport in Wales will be behind closed doors from Boxing Day following the surge in Omicron cases. A jury in New York has started deliberations in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, who denies recruiting teenagers to be sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. LBC weather, cloudy and cold, but mostly dry, a high of 7 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne. We're very slow on the M25 clockwise to junction 21A at the A405 exit, and that's because of an accident just after the junction, and one lane is closed. Also, these problems do continue in Keston on the 8232 Croydon Road. In both directions, the road is partially blocked, and that's after an accident, and there are queues on the approach. Highbury New Park is closed in both directions. That's following a burst water main, but better news in Tottenham, the Seven Sisters Road has
in a quarter of a mile at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the parkway, A312.
Severe delays on the Circle Line because of a shortage of trains.
LBC.
Britain. Latest intelligence shows you could be paying too much on your household bills. But the Money Super 7 can help with savings on car insurance, credit cards, broadband, and so much more. Their money-saving mission is far from impossible. So visit Money Supermarket and save now.
The Money Super 7, helping Britain save on car insurance, credit cards, and so much more. Super save with Money Supermarket.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
Hi, I'm Alice, part of the Crisis at Christmas team. If we've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that everyone needs a home.
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Providing food, advice, and a place to stay. Plus, helping people to find somewhere to call home. No one should be homeless and alone. Please donate £29.06 today. Search Crisis at Christmas. Thank you.
It was just another day in another week for Jenny. But as
she listened to the radio, she was suddenly filled with an urge to escape. So Jenny pressed the green button and flew to Ireland's wild Atlantic way. She met the friendly locals of Cork's famous English market, indulged in the delicious fresh seafood of Galway, and explored the dramatic coastlines and picturesque landscapes of Donegal. Press the green button and fly to Ireland's wild Atlantic way this winter. Just over an hour from London's Stansted Airport.
Plasma. It's incredible stuff. It's powerful, priceless to those who need it, and though you may not have heard of it before, it's used to create unique, life-saving medicines, and amazingly, it's in you. Which is why we need you to donate plasma to help save the lives of thousands of people with weakened immune systems, using medicines only your plasma can help create. Plasma. It's the medicine in you. Search Donate Plasma to register and help save lives.
I've cut my hand and it won't stop bleeding.
My son's just bumped his head. I've run out of my medication. I fell over and I think I've twisted my knee.
NHS 111. How can I help?
We never know who's going to be calling, but we know we can help them. NHS 111 call handlers help people get the urgent care they need. If you want a job to be proud of, answer the call. Search NHS 111 jobs today. We are the NHS.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
20 minutes after 7, Mike, you're going to be the first caller. Let's quickly take you through the front pages, many of which actually reflect the conversation we're having. The Daily Mail, rejoice, Christmas is looking safe. The Daily Express, tough call PM, but you can't cancel Christmas. The Times, Christmas hopes grow as Johnson delays action. I would be astounded if he did anything this side of Christmas. I just can't see it coming. New Year, not so sure. The Eye, Christmas lockdown blocked by Johnson and Cabinet. The Telegraph, probably aptly, confusion at Christmas. The Guardian, COVID surges, but Cabinet split means no extra curbs for now. Similar theme for the Financial Times. We were just speaking to one of their key reporters, weren't we? Johnson faces cabinet deadlock on COVID curbs before Christmas. The Sun says it's crimbo limbo and hold on to your baubles. I mean, that's quite funny, but it doesn't make any sense. It's like they just found words. What does that actually mean? So what do you think we ought to do over Christmas, darling? Well, it's crimbo limbo, isn't it, love? Yeah. Hold on to your baubles. I don't know. What do you mean? I just don't understand. The Queen has decided what action to take. Queen's quiet Christmas. She cancels plans. And she will be staying. She will not be going to Sandringham. She will be staying in Windsor. And lastly, the Metro has Raab's tailor-made excuse for that party where he said they couldn't possibly have been partying because they weren't. They were wearing suits, which seems a strange assertion. But there we are. All right, let's pick up on your views on this. Mike is in Cheshire. What do you do for a living, Mike? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. This week I'm working at my friend's turkey farm, several turkeys for Christmas.
Oh my God, that must be busy.
It's been a big day.
That must be
very busy.
How many turkeys roughly does he have?
Well, he's got 850 this year.
Wow. Is that more than usual or fewer than usual? Or what it's all about you?
It's a few more than normal, but he also does farm up markets during the rest of the year.
Okay.
So he likes to give some back. But we've noticed the trend this year. Massive turkeys we were selling, everybody wants them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, normally they want turkeys for sort of 4 to 6 people.
Yeah.
A lot of people are after sort of 10 to 12 people turkeys. So they're massive things.
Just now, what do you put? My view is possibly they didn't do it last year, so they decided they're going to have Grandad over this year. It's possibly my view.
That's basically last year we had loads of cancellations by this time.
Right.
This year we're getting more people phoning up asking for more turkeys, which we've run out of.
Really?
But the kind of the feedback is we don't care what the government says. Listen, we're having our family together. We've had enough of it.
Yeah.
They kind of not believe in the modelling, and we've got young people, old people, all different economic backgrounds coming up there.
And what is it? He has a farm shop. He has a farm shop, your mate, does he? Do you sell them out of the farm shop?
Yes.
Perfect.
So he does that, and then he sells them up at a couple of farmers' markets up in London.
And
so this year it's kind of everyone's saying no.
What is it? What's the one called Golden Bronze or something? What's it?
He's got bronze turkeys, black turkeys, white turkeys.
Okay, fantastic.
It's a good selection.
How does he work out that he doesn't? I mean, there's no point having any birds left.
In 300 yards, turn right onto Roslin Avenue.
There's a real science to it, isn't there?
There is, and also then you've got to take into account the size of birds that people want, which this year's kind of got us over because they're after bigger ones than normal.
Okay.
But luckily, because he's done some extras,